evening, everyone. I'm your host, comedian, magician, Danny Whitson. But it's all tricks aside, because tonight we're turning the paranormal into the normal. Join me as we explore the gray areas of reality. We're going to talk all things paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, and aliens, and see how it's all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association, and we are live. So if you're an experiencer yourself, or you're just plain nosy, be sure to send me your question and subscribe to the podcast. Now, get ready, because it's going to get deep. No, really, we're going to go way out there, because this is Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. All right, welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, and I'm your host, comedian, magician, and paranormal junkie, Danny Whitson. And guys, boy, do we have a show for you tonight. But before we get started there, a little bit of news. We had the NASA just landed on the moon. Yeah, we had a lunar landing. You may not have heard about it. Thank you, mainstream media. Thanks a lot. But yeah, most of us are just now finding out that we landed on the moon today. And then there's some of us who had to deal with a massive outage with AT&T cell service. Are the two connected? I don't know. Who knows? But anyways, other than that, we're going to get right into tonight's show with our really, really cool guest. He's a freelance journalist, author of several books. He's a 2022 Independent Press Distinguished Book Award winner. And his latest book, a science fiction novel, For All We Know, is now available for pre-order. Let's welcome author Mike Fiorito.
Hey, Danny, thank you for having me on. I love that intro,
Mike?
man. I'm doing great. I love what you said, making the paranormal normal in the intro.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, Mike, let's do this. I gave you a
Yeah.
quick little introduction here, but if you don't mind, you
Sure.
care to let the viewers learn a little more about yourself?
Sure. I'm as Danny said, I'm an author, journalist. I do a lot of music journalism. And to be honest, the music journalism has led me to this paranormal UFO interest. I would say I was always very interested, but we'll talk about that in some detail. But I've done a lot of interviews with the guitar player for Greg Allman, Scott Sherrard. You know, I'm sure everyone's heard of the Allman Brothers. Yeah. He was the guitar player and arranger for Greg Allman. And I also did an interview, and that turned into a book with Peter Rowan. And Peter Rowan is a bluegrass legend. Of course, I took a different take on it. The title of the book is called Mescalito Riding His White Horse. And we can talk about that. But I kind of take you on a journey. And to be honest, that book took me on a journey. And I began doing research and reading. And then there were some events that happened about 2017. I think you know what I'm talking about. That really lit a fire and got me interested. And a lot of books experiences and explorations have kind of gotten me to where I am now. I'm deeply interested in the subject. I tend to come at it from I'd say a philosophical point of view. I'm interested in, I'm not interested in the answers. I'm interested in the questions, because I do think we're bound by a big kind of question mark, and we're inside of that. And we can explore and we can share, and it's important to be open and that's what I love about a program like yours, is people can come and talk about these things, and you don't have to hide in the corner and feel like you're a weirdo that you have to hide what's happening to you, what has happened to you, what you know to be real. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
And I'm with you, Mike. I like to think of the philosophical. I explore that a lot, and almost with anything,
Hmm.
it's more about the questions than it is the answers, because it's you know it, even in this topic of UFOs, is like there are anytime when you look for an answer, you seem to find another question.
Right.
Uh, and and not to go too deep here, even though it's beyond the tinfoil hat, but I mean, there's always, sometimes that's what you should seek, is the questions,
Hmm.
and some questions never have any answers.
Yep.
Um, Now with you, okay, so you're a musician and an author. So it sounds like you were a musician first before you got into writing books.
Yeah.
A big fan of bluegrass, which I find super interesting about you. If you guys may not know, now Mike, you're from New York City. Is that where you're
Yep.
born and raised, grew up, correct?
Yep. In New York City.
Now, the beautiful thing about New York City is it's just a culture bowl of everything. So you can find something you like somewhere in that city, and somebody will know something about that. Not really the case any other places in the United States, y'all. If you go, to California, you're not going to find a whole lot of bluegrass fans. Probably not. And so and same thing with other places. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, but it's not. It's such a big cultural thing where I'm from in Tennessee. That's
Mm.
such a really cool thing to see someone from New York City who is a big bluegrass fan. Uh, Now, have you always been, a fan of this music, or what caught your ear?
Yeah. That's a great question. Great question. So, I mean, I started out like, most guys my age into rock and roll, into the Allman Brothers, into the Grateful Dead, into Led Zeppelin when I was younger. And so there was a band that Jerry Garcia played with called Old and in the Way. And Old and in the Way, they were it was a mixture of Vassar Clements on fiddle, who played with Bill Monroe, really coming from the source. And you had some kind of hippies as well playing in that band. And you had Peter Rowan. So Peter Rowan was a student, basically played in Bill Monroe's with the Bluegrass Boys. And he's now 82 years old. And this group, I would say this group, because of Garcia's popularity, they really projected bluegrass to a whole new audience. So people like me who are in the cities, we heard it. How did we hear bluegrass originally? We heard it like on, to be honest, shows like Hee Haw, which
Yeah,
actually had
that's right
great
back.
musicians, had great music, a lot of comedy, and it gets poo-pooed because of some of the portrayals, but man, that was a treasure of culture and music. And so I heard it, but I can't say I knew what it was. I knew this, I heard this music. It kind of was jamming and fast, really virtuoso type playing. And then as I got older, my brother he went to college 2 years ahead of me, and I'm in his dorm, and there's this guy playing this music. I said, "What the hell is that?" And and it was real bluegrass music, and it was a guy from Virginia playing it, loudly. Walked over, looked at his, talked to him, got his record. Then I started listening to the radio. So I became interested early, and I would say because I'm a kind of a I'm a student of and a little bit obsessive, yeah, if you ask my wife, I did a lot of investigation and then digging and learning. And I go back to, I like the old stuff. I like, Bill Monroe. I like the Stanley Brothers. I like the old stuff. I like the new stuff too, Billy Strings and some of the new stuff that's coming
Yeah.
out. Um, you don't want to be an old fogey, but that's what got me hooked. And I do like other musics as well. I'm a big jazz fan. Um,
Oh, yeah.
I I interview musicians. So when you interview musicians, they people can tell when they don't suffer a fool. And if you don't really know the music and if you're making it up, it's pretty obvious. But if you've done the homework and you're really interested and you've heard the music, you've listened to it, you've read the liner notes and you've gone and read other stuff. So that's my bluegrass story. I know I meet people at these festivals and everyone's got one. My uncle, my grandmother, and they're from everywhere. So I started a bluegrass page. It's the Peter Rowan appreciation page. Man, you have people from Japan, people from India, people all over the U.S., of course, Australia, Italy, Slovenia. I mean, it's incredible, and they're fans. They're real fans.
And the one thing, like, and this is something that all of us can relate to, whether if you listen to whatever type of music you prefer, is the magic that music holds over our feelings, our moods. So there's something, I don't even think it's explainable. I don't think it's explainable. I mean, it's a natural antidepressant at times. It's a natural, I mean, it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's something that we create. It's almost we create here, put it out, and then we reabsorb it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I write a lot about that in For All We Know, talk about a question, right? That's a man who doesn't want to commit to an answer. You said it, music is this thing. We don't really know why we do it. I've been researching it, investigating it. We seem to feel, scientists, researchers say that actually music preceded language.
Yeah.
It was a way, gorillas hum when they eat. They have favorite food songs. When you talk to a baby, I have 2 boys, I would talk to them musically before I actually, could speak to them in language. And you're right. Think of every major event in life, death, marriage, birthdays, it's accompanied, graduations. And what I'm interested in, music is a transportation system. It takes us places. It's a way to traverse the liminal. It's a way to penetrate, like meditation.
Yes.
And I have found, to me, music is a form of UFO. It's a form of how we access aspects of that broader consciousness.
And that's one thing we're really big on a kind of like a consciousness type theory. At least I am. I know Ryan Stacy is. To me, I think and this sounds a little weird, but there's almost 2 types of reality. There's a physical touch reality here, and then there's this conscious reality that exists. It's almost, and I think that's where you get a lot of maybe your UFOs, maybe interdimensional things that's going on. And this is also a way how I feel like we're all connected somehow. There's so, and when you look at stuff like music, other ways that we can connect and portray feelings without even, like you can do something with an instrument and we can both be feeling the same thing. It's a way
telepathy,
of communication. Exactly.
isn't it? It's instant telepathy. And that's really, the ego, our rational mind, is this little tiny little bit. It's funny because it thinks it's running the show. A rational mind, it's like running everything, and I got my job and I got my this, but man, you're just a drop in an ocean of uncertainty and the unknown.
Oh, so much unknown. And and don't get me wrong, I love science. I'm a supporter of science. I love astrophysicists. I love that. Yeah. But they only come up, they can only come up with the best guess until they get a better guess.
It's a moving target.
So technically, whenever you're constantly guessing, and I tell people, we don't know shit. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what it boils down to. And but the things, now this is something interesting because I do want to keep this, I do want to keep this in the in the paranormal area because do you think, and let's just throw this quick question out here before we get I want to get to your books, but do you think if there are other beings and out there, which I believe they are, I truly do believe, wonder how would they do music? I wonder if this music and art, the way we create it, is this something just strictly something we create, or if other beings, that.
Yeah. I mean, think of the movie 2001 where they communicate, bum, 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 bum,
yes,
bum. And I think the universe itself is noisy. there's plants make noise, actually. Insects make noise with their rubbing their limbs together. Pulsars explode, make noise. There's a lot of the universe is composed of vibrations. Now, music is just another form of vibration.
That's true.
And so I think that music is right in the pocket of the paranormal. You can have experiences that, and especially, I don't want to push the whole idea of using psychedelics. I don't want to push that necessarily, or cannabis. But if you and these are sacred uh, plants to cultures around the world. So it's not like you're
Absolutely.
pushing an agenda. But if you consume a cannabis or a psychedelic substance, that very fact of music taking you into, in a way, really an interdimensional experience. You're
Absolutely.
going into, it's just another way. You could do it via shamanism. You could do it via, it's not really in our culture. You could do it via trance dancing. And you can have encounters and experience. There's something called binaural beats, and it's something that was um, created at the Monroe Institute. So Robert Monroe, he was actually a communications business person. He got interested in doing research on binaural beats. The point of it is that there are two beats going at different timing, and it does something to your mind. And what Robert Monroe had was he would have these extended encounters with another intelligence, with what he deemed a higher intelligence that was giving him information about the purpose of the cosmos. And they would have, and the entity that he interacted with had a sense of humor too, and would kind of crack jokes, but had very profound things to say. Now you could say, is binaural beats music? There's there's there are binaural beats in music, in Pink Floyd,
Oh, yeah.
Dark Side of the Moon, or drumming. So you hear, they used to have drum circles. People would do
Hmm.
drum circles, but even trance music, or people go out to dance. It doesn't have to be. That's why I like what you said, making the paranormal normal. There are things that we are parts of our everyday life that we overlook as they're profound opportunities to experience something. Listening to music, um, meditating, breathing, and you can pierce that veil, I believe. Now, there are people that have very profound uh, experiences of uh, the other, of beings that traverse, that penetrate this universe. Yeah.
Have you heard, Mike? Okay. Um, the first of all, I'm a big fan of kind of like what we're doing now, finally in medicine with
Mm.
psychedelics to treat
Hmm.
depression, and I think it's about damn time we finally started, getting smart with stuff. But and it's also very possible, by the way, to have this experience not even using psychedelics. I think deep
Yeah.
trance meditation you can get
Hmm.
there. But I've always heard. Now I've never done DMT, but I've always heard people who've done DMT have had a similar experience like these spiritual elves or type
Hmm.
characters, which I always find so strange that it's people are experiencing the same type of a presence.
Yeah.
So it almost makes you think, I mean, there's something there. There's something
Well,
going on.
dig it, Danny. There's research going on at John Hopkins, at Berkeley, at NYU. I participated in a research study. They're very interested in people who encounter aliens, have extraterrestrial encounters while on a psychedelic substance. It happens so often.
Yeah.
It is something, Terrence McKenna, if you've read him, he's
Yes.
such a nut job, but what a super smart, really funny guy.
Yeah.
Really funny. I saw him speak in Berkeley in 19, I guess about 1990. He had everyone rolling because he's such a raconteur and so funny. But in his book True Hallucinations, he goes deep into that subject that he was using ayahuasca. He was using he was using a lot of stuff.
He's done it
Amanita
all.
muscaria, and he was interested in that in these experiences, he would have these elaborate encounters and communications. There's one thing that he talks about that this ayahuasca substance, and it relates back to the interdimensional stuff. He said that the some of the shamans would consume the ayahuasca and then they'd spit it out, and then this spit they would spread on like a stone, and basically they could manufacture uh, reality. So kind of like a scry, they could see through time, but also they could manufacture. That's something very interesting. I hear these scientists, the mainstream, and by the way, I am very much interested in science. I think science is crucial. I just think that some people make a religion out of science.
They do.
It,
You're
it is a
exactly
it's a moving target. Newton was right until he wasn't.
right.
When you get to the
Exactly.
subatomic level. And
Exactly.
Einstein was right, but he didn't accept the quantum, God plays dice.
Yeah, he hated. There was things that people don't realize is don't as brilliant as Einstein was. There was some, and it was proven, and he hated it because it was too paranormal feeling to him. It
Hmm.
was too unexplained, and so there's things that the God plays dice theory.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm trying to think of the actual term, but
Spookiness at a distance.
yes, spookiness at a distance. Something that is happening here happens on the other side. Could happen on this side of the world. A particle,
Right.
Uh, so all these things have been proven, But there's times whenever Einstein, it felt too crazy. Einstein didn't like it, you know.
Right.
And you talked about the father of physics. I mean, well, if you know anything about Newton, Newton was a little batshit crazy. So
He was an alchemist. He was
yeah,
into alchemy.
he
Yeah.
was.
And it's what's interesting is that McKenna was playing with this idea. He was playing with, yes, he was using a substance, but that's just one mode. That's one modality.
That's just one way.
It's
Yeah,
one way. It's one way to get your ego out of the way. And when you get your ego out of the way and you realize that we talked about spookiness at a distance, the interconnectedness of everything, and you can have different names for it. I think the science, when it matures to a different state, will be scientists will be oracles. There will be this kind of confluence of magic, that being able to recreate, to manufacture. That's what that, I forget the guy who created the type civilizations, but a type 3 civilization can engineer
a
space time.
physicist, Makakio,
Russian.
Makako, well, he's one of
Oh,
the guys that he talks about the type of civilizations, and I think right now we're not even at zero.
right,
So
right. We're not even harnessing the power of the sun.
yeah, we're
But
not even doing that yet. And okay, well, so here's this is very interesting stuff, and a lot of stuff I could talk about this all
yeah,
day. Uh, but let's talk about a little bit you and your writing, because you're
yeah.
a very creative person. Like I said, you're a musician. When did you start writing? When did you start coming up with these stories and stuff that you feel like you had to talk about, you had to get out there?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I didn't come home one night, at 13, I started making stuff up. I think I always was. I'm a storyteller. I think that's what I love to do. I get pleasure out of being able to communicate something in my head to you. And when someone says, "Oh, I read your story or I read your book," and you can tell when it's not your brother and your cousin, and when it's someone you don't know, they're coming at you in a genuine way.
Absolutely.
But that's such a moving feeling. And in a way, that's a paranormal type of thing. I'm communicating. I'm not sitting with you. I'm telepathically communicating with you via words. I could be dead. We're
Oh yeah.
communicating across space time, and that's the beauty of it. With the music writing, I feel like I'm a historian a bit. I want to capture. I want to. People look back on certain things and say, "Oh, that was 1965. I read this article," and you're contributing to that. But I started writing. I'd say science fiction is really what captured me. I started writing science fiction stories a long, long time ago, and I also did a lot of comedy writing. I did these.
Nice.
When I started to get serious, which is really about 20ish years ago, I met someone that looked at my writing and said, "Hey, did you submit this?" And I said, "No." Well, why aren't you submitting your writing? Well, submit your writing. Then he called me up. He said, are you finishing that story? Here's a great title for it. And he just kind of, he looked after me because he's a writer. He's a professional writer, and inspired me to get that completing. I think that's the thing you have to do with any art, with anything. You have to complete something.
I totally agree. One of the things that you mentioned earlier, like, with your storytelling, and whenever, Mike, you're dead and gone, those stories are going to be there forever. And so a lot of times, if you can put yourself out there, put your art out there, it's another way of you living forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's, and back on the whole consciousness, we exist in this other type of realm. I think there's something to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've got things out here in the ether that's floating around that I hope will keep people listen to for years and years to come.
Yeah,
Um, so I
it's a
think
message in a bottle.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, you said you're a big fan of science fiction. Now, here's the thing, okay? I like science fiction. I do. And I'm trying not to sound like that old man, but
Yeah.
damn, this is the reason why I love science fiction. I'll tell you this, because it wasn't reality. It was somewhere I could go in fantasy. But now
Mm.
that I'm getting older and AI and all this crap, and I'm like, damn it, I feel like I'm in a science fiction movie and I don't know if I like it.
I hear that. But I think you look at the Bible, you look at the Old Testament, you look at the other traditions of spiritual writing. Man, that looks a lot like science fiction. You know,
It
a guy
does, man.
comes in a chariot, it's all full of blazing fire, and there are angels, guarding the chariot and shooting lightning bolts, and he speaks in this booming, thunderous voice. That's science fiction. But I hear you. I think what is happening too is, it's interesting. We talked about, all of us, we all want to feel we are in control. We want to
Yeah.
feel like I have my job, I have my thing, I do this thing, it's in a box, I can control it, I know what it is, but we can't. But we crave fantasy everywhere we go. We crave it in music. In the most rational person, whoever we think is the most buttoned up, they're probably the craziest.
Oh,
But
yeah.
we want it. I mean, we go to sleep every night and we dream, and we uh, visit. My dreams, by the way, are a great source. I have a lot of UFO dreams, and it's a great source. I keep a dream journal, and if I read to you randomly some couple of things, they're 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 nutty, but they're a reservoir for ideas. Uh,
That is awesome. You know what, Mike? Definitely. I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear something.
yeah,
I do want to say this real quick.
yeah.
How you talked about how we crave fantasy. All right, now I've thought about this probably too much, more than a normal human being has. But whenever I go to think about, you look at us on an evolutionary, process here. We have eyes because light exists. We have ears because sound waves exist. We have, we have vocal cords to communicate. We have these things for reasons, for evolutionary reasons. Why do we have an imagination? Now, here, is it just for pure joy and entertainment and BS? I don't think so. I think there's a reason for our imagination. I think, I don't know what philosopher said, but basically, if you can imagine it, either it can exist or has to exist. And sorry, I forgot the name, but I'm a big fan of that. I think there's a reason why we have an imagination, and it's not for make believe.
Yeah.
I mean, if you, as far as I know, we're the only creature on this planet that questions our own existence and why we're here, who put us here. But I don't think if there was no reason for having that imagination or that thought, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Just like same thing with everything else we have. There's a purpose for it.
Yeah,
So,
it's a wild thing that we can think that I can speak to you in real time and my brain can process what I'm thinking as I'm saying it, and I can spit out something, and I could talk poetry, and I could, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune or to bear arms against a sea of troubles, or I could sing. What I like what Jung said, that we have this collective unconscious. So there's this we share these this repository of archetypes of a consciousness that's beyond, it's transpersonal, and it's something we all share. We share across, human beings share. I do believe that there is other intelligence. We are looking for intelligent. I think SETI was a kind of silly program, as much as I liked it when I was a kid, but there's intelligent life everywhere. There are insects communicating. There are birds, complex melodies.
heck, crows. They just found out how intelligent crows really are. It's insane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And corvids, they can bury their reserves and find them. They mourn their dead, corvids. Mockingbirds can memorize melodies up to like 3 minutes or more.
Yeah.
And they're gotten a mate. They get a mate. The mate it's the males that do it largely, and it's kind of impress the females.
This is one thing. Okay, I knew we do have a question coming up here, and I kind of want to connect this because you talked about you had some really crazy dreams, a lot of extraterrestrial, maybe but we do have a question here from Space Odysseys.
Yeah,
he wants to know: has Mike had an experience? Have you had maybe a UFO, maybe experience, paranormal?
Yeah, I have. I would say it largely comes through dreams. Is where, and I'll read a dream. I did have an experience. It's funny. At the time, I didn't think it was, but I'm now thinking about it. It was just after 9/11, maybe 9/13, 2001. Everybody in New York City was looking up at the skies. Everyone, all the time. We were terrified. I'm walking in Union Square, major thoroughfare, lots of people. I look up and I see, it looks like a carrier. It's gigantic and it's still. And there are clouds that are kind of wispy clouds that are blowing. This had to be, I'm not good at distances, but a couple of 1,000 feet in the air. No one looked up. This is a time when everybody's looking up. No one looked up.
Oh, wow.
I saw it. Now, maybe it was just a military craft. It's very possible. What strikes me in thinking about it now is, why did no one look up? When every time there was an airplane, every time there was, everyone was looking, especially a week after, days after. So I'm going to read, and this is in the book. This is captured in the book. And I think this is just a dream. I literally write them down, and then sometimes they're scribbly, and I dreamt that I saw a space shuttle type spaceship ripping across the sky, but one at a time. There was a string of circular ringed white UFOs shooting across the sky. They were kind of shooting out of this cigar shaped kind of galaxy that was coming toward me. In addition to UFOs, there was a gigantic pine tree, not standing tall, but sideways, connected to this long trail of UFO ships. It seemed to my dreaming mind that the phenomenon was reflecting my mind back to it. It basically wanted me to see what it thought I wanted to see. So that's just one example of that's one dream example.
And we've had guests on here before who believe that's another way that they do communicate with us is through dreams. And this is crazy because the only UFO I've ever seen, the only experience I ever had happened last year, late last year. This is pretty recent. And I was and I had never seen anything before, not even close. I was at a red light, and I just happened to look up, and I saw this. It was almost a cigar cylinder type shape, and it was moving. And the thing that was really weird, it was way too high to be a drone, and kind of too low to be a plane. I mean, you could clearly see the shape of this thing. And the thing that was really unnerving is just how nonchalant it was just going. Like, I don't give a damn who sees me. I'm here. And immediately I almost wrecked, because I'm trying to get my damn phone out. And, oh, my God, I can't believe this is happening. So I even, first thing, Ryan Stacy, this is his baby here. And he's the only UFO guy I know, at the time there. And I was like, Ryan, I saw a UFO. Holy crap, I really saw one, And one thing he brought up, he's like, it's kind of interesting that now, because I have been all about this past year, about everything that's going on right now with the UAPs and whatnot. And then I see it, which to me, it was just kind of odd, you know? So it's almost like to the point to where if your mind is open for it, they will show you.
Yep.
So, and then like, I believe, let's see, Live Light. She's got a question. It's not up on the screen, but she said maybe you were the only one with the awareness, the ability to see the frequency or dimension. And I totally agree with stuff like
it's
that.
Very possible. I mean, there are people that two people are looking up at the sky. One person has an experience, the other doesn't. So there's no like a monolithic way this thing happens. And you talked about you're starting to pay attention. Maybe that's when I started to pay attention to precognition. So thinking about things before they happen, or telepathic things.
Yes.
When I started to pay attention to those things, they start to manifest. Someone can say, well, you're crazy. And I would say, no, you're crazy, because you're just living inside. There are so many accounts. And these are people, they're housewives, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're people that have a lot to lose. Why would they say, I saw a UFO or I saw an alien, outside my window and I had this communication? It's across cultures, it's across time, it's a part of what happens. We don't know exactly what they are. I'm not, I think here's something, Danny, that my feeling is there are people see nuts and bolts things, right? And then there's a lot of stuff that happens. It seems to be in your mind. Those two don't have to cancel each other out.
No, not at all.
It can be both. It could be it's in your mind, and it's something penetrating this reality in some way. It's breaking through.
Well, and also I always bring this up is like the reality that we see right here, actually our brains are constantly hallucinating reality.
Exactly.
And last week's guest, we had a neurosurgeon on, and we were talking, and basically what your brain can't make sense of, it makes up.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Or like Whitley Strieber. Whitley
which is
Strieber
so
says,
wild.
yeah, that's interesting. Whitley Strieber says too. So I was listening today. He was at the author of the Impossible Conference. This was a while ago. He was talking, and there was one in his book, Communion. He has these encounters that he describes that. It was actually a letter that came from someone who read the book Communion, and this person who had these elaborate. They seemed like fairies that appeared in this person's home, but the whole family did see them. They saw different kinds of things. But what Whitley said is that we tend to, when we see objects in the world, we look at it and we look at what is it historically. I relate it to what I know in context.
Yes.
And if I don't, either I make it up or I relate it to something I know.
Your brain's, exactly. Trying to make sense of. By the way, the movie Communion scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. But that, and did that take place in New York, upstate New York, somewhere?
Yes, yeah. He's lived in New York City, but he had a place upstate New York. He's from Texas, but he's kind of lived around New York.
Such a, I think there is a documentary out there that you can check out, and it's a crazy book too. Wasn't that like one of the first bestsellers of the UFO phenomenon, Communion? Speaking of books, though, let's do this real quick. It looks like Space Odysseys. Also, I want to make sure I get your name right. Gary Voorhees. He just pre-ordered For All We Know. So kudos to Gary.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. But yeah, it's amazing so much we don't know, and so much power that what this thing actually really does, and like I said, we're constantly, so the definition of reality is really kind of a blur to begin with. But I think I just found it very interesting once I started to pay attention how much more I've seen. And now this is a big part of my life. Every day I'm looking at news in the UFO world, what's going on. And the more that I'm starting to discover, it's just, and it's almost, here's the other thing, when you talk about making the paranormal normal, that's what I'm doing. I'm not freaked out that aliens are real or interdimensional beings are real. They are real. This is a real thing. It's not freaked me out. It hasn't shocked my reality. It's just I've accepted it and with the information that's out there. But let's do this real quick, Mike. We got to cut to a commercial break. As soon as we come back, we'll be back here with Mike Fiorito talking about his new book, For All We Know.
Thank you.
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today.
Business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
All right, welcome back. And if you're just not tuning in, we have been talking with science fiction author Mike Fiorito. Mike, well, let's do this because we haven't had a real good chance to talk a whole lot about this book for all we know. Said it is a UFO science fiction book. If you can, without giving any spoilers or giving too much away, but can you tell us just a little bit about it?
Sure. And one thing, if I may, I just want to get up and show the T-shirt I'm wearing.
Nice.
So this does factor its way into the whole formula of the book. The book is very much. It is. I got a review and it wasn't published yet, but it's out of the UK. And the book says the review says it's a very untypical UFO book. The way I tried to tackle it, Danny, was to not do, mantids and not to, is to make it very normal, is to, I explore, I'm going to read a little section of it. Some of it goes pretty far out, but I wanted to also, near-death
This is Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, Mike. So we go out there, baby.
Yeah. I also wanted to invite people, because my journey began with the subject. I would say that I wasn't someone that was taking the subject seriously until I had a few things that happened. I read Jeff Kripal's book, The Flip, and that blew my mind wide open. And then a series of things happened. I'd like to talk about them a little bit. But of course, then you had the 2017, the New York Times article and the Tic Tac video,
Yes.
and then this just keeps coming. There's stuff that keeps coming. One thing I want to say on that topic, I don't know how my feeling about disclosure is the government doesn't know what to say. Or are they going to say, well, there's these things that happen. We don't understand them. They could come from another dimension. I think they're afraid that they're going to freak people out. Or maybe some people would be freaked out. The truth is they don't know what's happening, and no one has the complete knowledge. But there are things that occur. There are anomalies. People have experiences, and they're not crazy. They're real. It is too frequent, too often. And we even have now data from different modalities. We have radar data. We have images. We have testimonials from people that are trained observers. We have scientists that are engaging in this now in an in earnest way. You have guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's funny because I'd like to smack that guy in the face. It's like,
he pisses all of us off. And I was such a big fan of Neil, but his arrogance and
yeah,
cockiness against it really gets under my skin a little bit.
you have anomalous data. Why don't you go look at it, scientist? Isn't that what you do? So my feeling, and I'm not a scientist. I'm a writer. I consider myself a phenomenologist. I'm into exploring how things work, how consciousness works, how the universe works, how to get outside of my own limitations, my own box. If I may, I'm going to read just a little section. I promise it won't be too long.
Oh, let's hear it.
One morning, I wake up to the sound of a loud boom. I run to the window in my bedroom. The sky is bright blue. I can't see a single cloud. My eyes fix on a squadron of gigantic metallic spaceships zigzagging across the sky in formation. Outside, looking up alongside my neighbor, I can see that the ships are black triangles enclosed in translucent spheres. The edges of the triangles push up against the spheres. The ships are massive, like mountains or gods. They move effortlessly and without sound. A woman taps me on the shoulder. Do you know why they're here? She has red hair. Her blue eyes are wet with excitement. She might be wild, I think to myself. No, I don't, I reply. They've come to take over. They've been watching for thousands of years. They know who we are, she says. How do you know this? They've always come to me in dreams. Can I curse, by the way?
Absolutely.
We fucked up on the planet, and now they want to remove us and secure Earth before we make it uninhabitable. The heavens are exploding, clouds billow and enlarge, bright lights stream down on us. I'm not sure if they're from the spacecraft or what. On the street, it's pandemonium. Cars have stopped. People have gotten out of their cars to gaze into the illuminated skies. We didn't take care of Mother Earth, the woman says. We've been too focused on greed and plundering the bounty we were given. Is this a punishment, I ask? It's a reclamation, she says. I look down and notice that I'm in my underwear. The sky has become pitch black. Lights flicker and blink. Despite what this woman is saying about the end of the world, the whole thing is beautiful. I feel joyous. At least we'll die together, I think. Isn't that the best way for us to go? In one fell swoop?
Oh man, I love it. I love it, dude. The okay, one thing that we had talked about earlier, with everything that's going on, and now when did you start writing this? Was this around the 2017 time? Is this kind of what inspired you to write this book?
So here's what happened, if I can tell you. So I wrote a book of science fiction stories. I started writing this probably over a year ago, something like that. I wrote a book called Falling from Trees, which is a collection of short stories, science fiction stories. And that was, I lose track of when, but let's say I wrote that book in 2020, because you write a book and then you go through the whole publishing experience, then it finally publishes. So this book was exploring the origins of consciousness, exploring the limits of cosmology. It was kind of these little bitty stories. They're not long stories, and they're kind of thought experiments. This book set in motion a whole series of things that would happen. So then I was looking for new things to kind of trigger new ideas, knock me off my feet. I read Jeff Kripal's book, The Flip. That book really it changed my mind. It really
Now, I'm not
made
familiar with the book. Is this a UFO type
Jeff
thing?
Kripal is he's like he's a professor of religion, believe it or not, and he looks at the UFO phenomena, which he doesn't doubt what people are saying. He listens to people, and he says this is kind of like how a religion is formed. Something miraculous happens in the sky, comes down from outer space, does something to us. We are puzzled, and we create something sacred out of this.
Well, I don't want to get you off on what you're saying,
Yeah,
real quick,
sure.
but this is something that I would like to.
Yeah.
A lot of people, how we're talking about, transparency, we need and slow. It's like slowly we're being fed more and more information. And then also I've even told Ryan and some of the folks this, and then also we're being fed bullshit. There's some bullshit thrown in. And sometimes the best way, if it's going too fast, we need to pull it back a little bit. Let's throw some discredited bullshit in there to throw them off. And to kind of keep it going at the speed they want it to go. Now, and I always think, why not just tell us? We can handle it. We can handle it. Well, let's think about this for a minute. Can the world handle it? As Americans, Canadians, yes, I think we can handle it. But I think there's some other places in the world that are so dominant with their religion and their culture. This could trigger something really. There's a possibility this could trigger just a ginormous world war. It could.
Yeah.
I do see why maybe because the process that the way things are going, the way they're going, and also there's the economy. There's if we have if we've got this type of energy that we can travel, if we know anything about this, your big oil companies, will be broke, and we know how they run things. But there's a lot of these things there, and on the religion, like you was talking about the guy, I think I think there would be a lot of problems if it just all of a sudden happened.
I think so. I think there are a lot of corporations that are very much invested in us doing the status quo. They're very much invested in us. For instance, I talk about in this book, and the factor is very large in the book, because I think it is connected to the UFO experience, is the awakening to the world we live in, and to the sacredness of the world we live in, to the sacredness to the people around us, the sacredness to life, the beauty of trees and the oceans, the sovereignty of rivers and the sky, to be, have a clean, non-polluted sky and clean soil. This goes very much against the powers that be that want us to keep chugging along, to keep sucking down on whatever. It's all greed. I think the UFO, for me, and where I resonate and connect, is it's a spiritual path. It's a spiritual journey. And it's also kind of cognitive, that it shows me that we are all connected, and
Absolutely.
We don't know exactly, are we a thing, a specimen in a test tube? I don't know, but I know this: if I step on your foot, it hurts. Those things are real. If I punch you in the face, it's gonna hurt. We need to wake up to being better to each other, to being kinder, to opening our minds, and to opening the channels to we use a little tiny fragment of our brain, to opening up to considering, well, let me explore telepathy, let me explore precognition, things will start happening. Things will come to you.
Well, and Mike, I was always a skeptic. First of all, like I said, I'm an entertainer. My trade is I'm a magician.
Yeah.
So I know how to fool people. I'm a professional bullshitter. So I was always a big skeptic on any type of mind reading or anything to that, until here these past few years of my life, where I've opened my mind out and I've done some actual research. I've actually done some research, and the whole remote viewing thing is a very real project that the United States government uses today, practices today, because there's real accuracy results, real results with it. It's a real thing. And like I said, once again, I think that is connected with everything else that's kind of going on.
Absolutely.
Right? So, this was something like with your book, like you have written other books, but this, you said you started around, you said 2020 is when you started writing?
For all we know, I started about a year ago, something like over a year ago.
Okay.
And I was feverish reading all of the UFO books I could read and inspired by all the documentaries. But what I wanted to do is, I'm a storyteller. I'm not an academic. I am working on something now that's a little bit more on the academic side, because I haven't done something like that exactly. So I wanted to go deep into that. But I wanted to tell stories about, say, for example, death. My mom died, I'm losing track, but something like over a year ago. When you have that experience of someone going to the other side, and I was reading Whitley Strieber's books at the time, interestingly enough, that puts you close into where that border is between us and the other things out there.
Absolutely does.
And you kind of, and I wanted to make the stories relatable, because I do feel when I say UFO, people they giggle, and I'm not going to fight them. I mean, I have my arguments, my opinions. I don't want to fight about it. But if you're giggling, you probably haven't done the research.
They have
probably right. You haven't looked at it well enough. There's enough testimony. There's enough data. There's enough information. There are too many people for too long that have had experiences, and now we have some definitive things that people are coming out. I mean, pilots say, I'm seeing these things every day.
And they're finally able to report it.
Right.
Basically, they would have been fired if they would have reported it.
Exactly.
Your airline pilots, and then your Navy pilots. And
it's interesting that what's interesting is that the Congress talks about it from the perspective of military, because that's what's going to get people's attention. And we don't know, are they benevolent? Are we benevolent? I mean, how do we treat the world? Are we benevolent? Maybe the world is benevolent and evil, both. And who's to say the entities, let's just say we think the universe, we think the observable universe with telescopes, we can see 200
very tiny
billion, right, little tiny ones. We can see 200 billion trillion stars. There are more stars out there than there are grains of sand on the beaches of all of the beaches of the earth. And that's as much as we can see. That's as much as we can see. They're saying that there's multiple dimensions, maybe infinite dimensions, that are happening right here and now, coming across. The powers that be don't want us to be enamored with that which is sacred. They don't want us to be caught up having a spiritual life, at least not a spiritual life that hasn't been administered to us and keeps us in a little tidy, nice box.
There's no money in it.
There's no money in it. If you're exactly, if you're having revelations through dreams, if you're awakening to, and I'm not saying I'm an awakened person. I'm someone who's trying to be awake. It's a struggle.
It is.
You deal with your petty shit and your things that piss you off, and the guy that's making a left turn and doing this, and you kind of, that's not very wise. That's not very spiritual, but it's a process and something we work on. But this path has taken me into looking at the truly precious things of life and what is sacred. And there's sacred everywhere. There's sacred things, everywhere, to protect and preserve them. And perhaps, and these are all questions I have, and that's why I say, for all we know, perhaps there's at least a kind of consciousness level that they're not even going to look at us and talk to us because we're so petty in the way we exist.
I do think, and not to sound cynical towards human beings, but we're pretty shitty creatures. I think we're the worst thing that's ever happened to this planet. But
yeah.
I think, and this, I've never had one of these experiences, with any type of alien abduction or anything. Knock on wood. Don't take me. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I do or not. Maybe. Just don't. Yeah. But I think there has to be something interesting about us, you know. And and let's don't forget, there's also that theory that it might be us from the future. That's a very, which would bring a lot of reason. But it's humans were very complicated and at the same time very stupid and also very brilliant. One thing about us, one thing we do, we overachieve. We constantly overachieve. And so I think there's, a lot there, and trying to be, okay, the things that drive human beings, we got food, sex, and greed, are probably like the three major things. And that's why people do anything. That's everything you do. There's those are the reasons why we do, and it's embedded in us. It's what we do. And trying to fight that urge to not flip that guy off, on the interstate, and trying to be that better person. That is a constant work, and something that I have to remind myself of constantly is these things on the outside only affect me if I let them. It's back to that, we're in power up here. So, basically, on the conscious level, on the spiritual level, however you want to go with this is, I think that's another part of being human that we don't explore enough of. And it's easy to get caught up in that other busy and the powers that be, the people who want us to keep our heads down. You go to work, you get that check and go back, and then you watch your TV shows and don't pay attention to anything else that's going on.
Yeah. There's Aldous Huxley called it the reducing valve. So we have this thing and we need it. If I'm overwhelmed by the sound over here and by that color over there, I can't progress through my everyday. This reducing valve kind of shuts down all of the extraneous, we'll call it extraneous, but other inputs and aspects of what is happening. And so to some extent, we pierce that veil through trauma. Often something happens, but when you look at people who have had an experience with the phenomena, oftentimes they become more spiritual.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It triggers something that is a deep thing in them, and they realize that, and I don't want to dispense with reality, because it's important. I have a wife, I have 2 boys, love them with all my heart, and it's real. It's 100% real.
Mike, one thing I do want to add, add this real quick, because like I had my first UFO experience a few months back, but before that I've had several paranormal type experiences. dating all the way back to 1988. You know, when I was a kid, I actually
Yeah.
saw a paranormal, a ghost, spirit, whatever you want to call it. So I've always felt like I'm kind of sensitive to these things, and which I used to make fun of that term. Now I'm one of them, you know. But I'm kind of sensitive. But I do want to bring this up because you brought up your mother passing away, and this is something that happened to me Friday. My mom has been passed away, I think 16 years now. It's been quite a long, and you know, this has nothing to do with religion at all. But I do believe, I'm a believer that your loved ones, even after they pass, if you pay attention, if you open your ears and eyes, you will see they are still with you. Okay. You just got to pay attention. So, a funny little story is Friday. I remember waking up and I wasn't in the best mood, and I turned some music on, and the very first song that popped on, I haven't heard in probably 20 years. Okay, and it's a song. It's remember the old song back in the 80s? Don't worry, be happy.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Had Robin Williams in the video.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a little kid, my mom would sing that song to me. Okay. So immediately I heard the song, and immediately Mom just popped in my head. And then it dawned on me. I was like, oh, wait. I looked at the calendar, and Friday was my mother's birthday. The first song, and I mean, people may take that and say, oh, that doesn't mean anything. But to me, that was something. That was her saying hello. And so, you know, you mentioned your mom passing, and did that kind of what inspired you to write the book, though? Did it kind of help?
It was a part. It became a part of it, and it's the idea of the transition. And it's funny when it's happening, when you're in those situations, the transition becomes: is she really? Are they dead? Is now you were taking care, and now you're putting him in a box into the ground. I don't want to get morbid on the whole thing, or it is profoundly real. I mean, you getting hit in the anvil, bang, this is real, because when someone like that close passes, they are no more in this realm. They're somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, I dream. We communicate in different ways, like you said, through music. It's funny that my dad passed away, and it's very much to me, it's very much in the paranormal realm. My father was very much into science fiction and UFOs, and he loved that stuff. I started to write. It's funny, my mom said a long time ago, she said, you should write about our family. So I wrote about our family. And then she goes, my God, why did you write about our family? It's like, you said to write. But I wrote a lot about my dad, actually. And it felt as if he was communicating with me across time, and I was manifesting him. And it's sort of like, your dad wants to take care of you. Okay, not everyone, I realize not everyone's dad experience is the same, but many dads put their arm around you. They want to take care of you. They want you to be, and I felt like he kind of slipped me a couple of pieces of paper and said, write this down. You're going to do something with this. And that has launched me into the writing career. And I owe it to him. Now, someone might say, well, that's not a UFO experience. Well, F you. It is to me. He came out of the sky through the space-time fabric and said, you need to do this now. And it delivered it to me. And that was the beginning, because when I said that I started to write, at first I was writing comedy stuff. And then my friend looked at my stuff and he said, when you're serious, it's actually pretty good. You should write more serious stuff. So, you have to do all kinds of things, but sometimes you're funny, sometimes you're serious, but the serious stuff got very serious and it got deep. And it was something, people reacted to it. And the writing has been a way of communicating. It's been a way of. There's a funny story. There's a writer in the UK, and he writes about the paranormal. And we were reading each other's books. He wrote a book called The Hidden Universe. His name is Anthony Peake. I sent him my book, Falling from Trees. He sent me his book.
You got all these books now we got to read now.
Yeah, it's a whole pile of them. He's one of the stories in my book is called, what is it called? It's called The Three Bridges. So Anthony writes to me and he says he lives in London or outside London. And he goes, Mike, I was reading your book and I'm on my way to my aunt's house, who I visit, and I have visited for 20 years. I pick up your book as we're rolling into the station. The next chapter is called The Three Bridges. That's the station I'm getting off at right now.
Oh, wow.
There was some kind of communication that was happening, and the writing itself became a means of transportation. We
got a question. We got a good question right here from Liv Light. Thank you so much, Liv, with your questions, by the way. Liv is awesome. She's here every week. Speaking of writing, have you ever tried automatic writing? Just free flow energy with no conscious intent. Maybe you still will channel other beings. Have you ever tried anything like that, Mike?
I have. Yeah, I have, and it's.
What is that like? I mean, have you gotten some really interesting stuff out of doing that?
I have. The thing with writing is the Russians say you have to have a good butt, because you have to sit down and do it, and we all poo-poo our ideas. Oh, that just sucks. That's stupid. Why would I write that? Everyone else has written that. But I do a lot of automatic writing. You just start writing and it starts writing. And you have communication. You have someone is talking through you somehow. And it's it feels like someone's talking through you and it's transportive. You're moving, you're going somewhere. Yeah, I do that all the time. The dream writing is important too. I highly recommend it. When I look through my dream journal, they are fucking hysterical. The dreams are just nuts beyond belief, but there are gems and jewels. So I wrote this book that I talked about, Mescalito Riding His White Horse, and this is based on Peter Rowan, the bluegrass musician. I was having these explosive, crazy dreams, and I'm telling him these dreams, and I'm thinking, this guy thinks I'm nuts, man. But it became the basis to answer the question of a book. This is just automatic writing. This is just writing from dreams, just letting it pour out. Of course, then you have to, when you let that go, you let that part of your mind go, it's rich like a river, just with imaginative ideas. Then you have to put it in the shape, and so other people can join in. Because if I just vomit stuff out of my imagination, maybe not everyone's going to get it.
Gotcha. Now, I've always heard about keeping a booklet on your nightstand, and writing your dreams down, because you'll forget it within 5 minutes sometimes.
Totally.
Now I do a lot of this, because in my show, I'll have ideas, or an idea for a bit or a joke will pop in, and I'll either write it down, or hell, I've even texted it to my wife. She's like, "What the hell is this?" I'm like, "Just keep it," So, but do you? You do the same thing. You keep stuff with you on a day-to-day basis, like something to write on real quick if an idea pops in. With the automatic writing, that's something I've never tried that. And is it something you have to do any meditating before you do it, or is it you just sit down and what do? You just kind of let your mind?
Yeah, I've done it in a few different ways. So I have done it where you want to get into a state, you want to get into a receptive state. I think it's always helpful, but sometimes, if you're ornery and you're pissed off, that could be a state too. There are many ways, many paths to the river, and whatever is going to get you there. Um, so I would highly recommend to anyone.
And
You don't know what you'll
there's
get.
something once again magical, about putting your thought right up here is
Yeah.
where we've created it, and then getting it actually on paper or something there. Like they've even said, write your goals out, and you're
Hmm.
more likely to accomplish them if they are written out.
Hmm.
There's something magical about getting, these thoughts on paper, on something, existence into this reality.
Hmm.
So now with your book though, do you talk about any of these dreams? Did it inspire any part of this book? Some
A
of these
lot
dreams?
of it. Yeah, a lot of this the current book. There are dream images. A lot of the UFO images come from dreams, and I feel that that's as valid as any other source. It's as valid as an encounter, an experience, because they are very real when they happen to me. They're emotional. I've cried in them. I laugh. They it's as real as anything else that I've experienced.
And that's interesting, is just throwing this out here, is because like I said earlier, there's people who do believe, and this happens a lot, that they are contacted through their in a dream state.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, who knows, Mike, they may have been giving you some material for the book, maybe helping you write this, helping you get this stuff out there. So, and this big, and this being a science fiction type book, it's something that I can't wait to check out and read too, because just the part that you did read, already had me, what's going on here, so,
Cool. And the reason why, so I wrote it. If you write a personal testimonial book about the phenomena, you won't get it published. You won't get it published. You have to self-publish, or
really,
there may be specialized publications. But I wanted to have the latitude to make things up, and I wouldn't lie about it. I'm not going to lie about stuff and make up things to sell a book. I wanted to put it in the fiction category because also it's other readers will read it. I feel other people may check it out because some people are going to say, "Oh, that's a paranormal book. Oh my God, there
yeah.
he goes. Now he's off that rail." So I wanted to invite other people into the conversation, and I did want to have the latitude to make things up. To not be a strict, autobiographical. There's a lot of autobiography in that book, but it's not strictly autobiographical.
Absolutely. And I mean, also you're a little more free to add a little more entertainment, and there's nothing wrong. That's the other thing, is there's nothing wrong with adding some entertainment value into this, because like I
Hmm.
said, we crave fantasy, and even if fantasy is reality too, so there's nothing wrong with feeding that part of our brain. Uh well, let's do this real quick before we get out of here, Mike. This has been an
Yeah,
interesting conversation. I've really
totally.
enjoyed this. I've,
Enjoyed it.
I've got a list of books now that I got to check out, including yours. I want to check out the Flip book. But like I said, we've already had, Gary has pre-ordered the book. Thank you so much, Gary. We
Thank you.
really appreciate that. I believe Gary is also an open-minded physicist. I believe he mentioned earlier. So, which that's hard to come by these days. So, but before we get out of here, Mike, can you let the guests know, where can they learn more about you?
Sure.
Where can they buy your books? Just let them
Sure.
lead them your way.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Danny. You're a great host, and I love what you did. The card trick, by the way, out of your mouth. Talk about being entertaining and presenting magic. You can go to MikeFiorito.com. That's Mike Fiorito.com, and it will have descriptions of the books, links to the books. They're generally available everywhere that you can get a book, but I mostly use Amazon just because it's easy, I guess. But they're available anywhere. And if you have questions, Gary or anyone that has a question, and I'm sorry, it was Liv.
She goes by Liv Light here, but
Liv Light.
she is here every week. She's a fantastic guest. And Lisa too. Lisa's here. It's a great show. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If you guys have questions, you can go to my page and you can ask questions. I'll gladly answer them, and I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't presume to know everything. In fact, for all we know, I don't know shit.
Oh man. Well, once again, hey, Mike, I really appreciate you coming on Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. You've been fantastic. And hey, man, next book, we got to get you back on and talk about it.
Definitely. It's in the works, man. It's in the works. So let's keep the conversation going.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Danny. Be well. And thank you to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat.
All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Mike Fiorito. A lot of interesting stuff. I got to do catch up on some reading myself. If you guys first time tuning in, be sure to like, subscribe Beyond the Tinfoil Hat here on YouTube or wherever it is you listen to podcasts. Be sure to subscribe, stay up to date. Next week, we will not have an episode next week. The reason why, it's our tech guy, Chris. It's his birthday. We got to give the guy a day off, especially on his birthday. And it's a leap year, so he's going to be 9 years old. So you guys be sure to wish him a big, fat, happy birthday. Also, for you guys who are wondering, who the hell is this Danny guy? Where's Ryan? Well, my name is Danny Whitson, and I'm a comedy magician. If you'd like to learn more about me, you can go to Facebook and follow me at Danny Whitson Magic and Comedy, or on Instagram at Super Magic Boy. And also, I've got a comedy magic album out that you guys can go listen to. Listen to a comedy magic album. You're like, what the hell is that? It's got stand-up, sketch, and interactive magic tricks you can do as you listen. It's called Dirty Tricks. And also, hint, it's called Dirty Tricks. So don't let your kids listen to it. But anyways, be sure to check that out. Anywhere you stream music, you can find it. Danny Whitson, Dirty Tricks. Be sure to check that out. Guys, like I said, we won't be here next week, but the week after, we got another really cool guest. So come back and see us. And like always, paranormal junkies, keep the normal paranormal. My name's Danny Whitson. I'm your host, and I will see you next time. All right, that does it for this episode of Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. A big shout out for tonight's awesome guest, and a bigger shout out for everyone who tuned in. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever it is you listen to your podcasts. And like always, be sure to stay curious, heed the world, and keep the paranormal normal. I'm your host, Danny Whitson, and this has been Beyond the Tinfoil Hat.